In 2010, Calgary elected a new mayor. How's he done so far? Is he okay with you? Has he met your approval rating? Well, now he wants to run for another term. Your chance to talk to Mayor Nenshi, live with Mayor Nenshi on Shaw TV now. Hi, this is Phoenix, and welcome to Live with Mayor Nenshi. A couple of ways that you can reach the mayor tonight, and here's how you do it. You can call 403-539-6710. You can also send a tweet, hashtag Nenshi Live. And as you may have already noticed, yes, the mayor is here, but we also have a live studio audience for you as well. Mr. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. It was in 2004, Mr. Mayor, that you decided to run for city council. In 2004, you didn't win that office, but
heck no.
What you decided to do, though, was run for mayor in 2010. 6 years transpired. In that six years, you must have learned a few things, obviously.
Absolutely. So when I moved back to Calgary in 2001, I had two real passions. The first was cities, making cities work better, and particularly making this city work better. The other was getting people more involved in their community, especially young people. And what I learned very quickly when I moved back is that it's relatively easy to get people involved in their community, to volunteer with a nonprofit organization and so on. Later, when I was a professor, I saw the research and it really bears that out.
Right.
Number one reason people don't volunteer is because nobody asked me to. But what I also learned is that it's really difficult to get people involved in politics. You know, people are cynical. They don't think that government really represents them or does stuff for them. Mm-hmm. And so back in 2004, I decided that we need a campaign to get a bunch of young people to volunteer, to actually work on a political campaign, to see what it's like to get the political bug. And I drew the short straw.
That's all right.
It was a fun campaign. We had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
But it was all a bunch of people who'd never worked on a campaign before. And since then, a lot of those people have continued to be involved politically, and that was really my goal. And over those next 6 years, I continued to do more work, particularly as an academic at Mount Royal University, around how can cities work better and how can people be more involved in their community. And in the end, I kept trying to convince people to run. I kept trying to convince them to run. And I kept striking out. I struck out all the time. I especially struck out with young women. Now, I'm used to striking out with young women, but this was different.
Sure.
Right? This was different because people were saying, especially women, politics is not for me. It's too adversarial. People are just in it for themselves. People say really mean things about you on the internet. When you screw up, it ends up on the front page of the newspaper, or I've got young kids, or I want to start a family, and that kind of life is just not compatible with my life.
But that was quite a step for you, though. When you decided, was there part of you that said, you know what, what am I doing? What am I doing running for mayor? I mean,
oh gosh,
let's do the city council thing again. Was there part of you that thought,
well, so, you know, what had happened was all these people kept saying to me, forget about it. Yeah. And I kept saying, look, it can be better. Politics can be better. Government can be better. We got to get better people in there. And enough people just said to me, look, put your money where your mouth is. You've talked about this for so long. Prove it. Mm-hmm. And that's really where it ended up. So we had a big debate. Should I run at all? Should I run for alderman? Should I run for mayor? It took me months to make up my mind. And what I decided at the end of the day was that the vision that I try to hold for the city was big enough that it had to be from the mayor's chair. You know, I have 14 aldermen who do fantastic work, and they do important work. But I'm the one who has a real privilege, a real gift,
sure,
that I get to talk about the whole city. And I've been given and entrusted with that ability to talk about the whole city and where we're going as a community. And so that was the right fit for me, and luckily voters agreed.
You can say a lot about the person by the people that he or she surrounds himself with. And you have done an amazing job. I've had the pleasure of meeting a few of these people that work directly with you. When you decide those people around you, I'm guessing you want complete and utter honesty from
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely.
There's no holds barred. Is that what it's like when it's behind the mayor's door?
You know, it's quite a wonderful thing. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was elected, I was the first new mayor elected who wasn't previously a member of council in 30 years. And the city, frankly, didn't have a very good way of dealing with that. And one of the other things I learned was that the people who work in the mayor's office work on contract at the pleasure of the mayor. And they had all already accepted severances because they didn't know who was going to win the election and so on. So I was elected on a Monday. I was sworn in the following Monday, so 1 week. And that Monday when I was sworn in, everybody's contract expired. The receptionist, the secretary, the file clerk, everybody. And so it was a bit freakish,
daunting, sure.
at the beginning, because I didn't have anybody. One of my campaign volunteers came to work with me full time for 6 weeks to help me sort it out, and I hired a temp to be the receptionist.
Oh,
who turned out to be great, and we kept her for 2 years. But the great thing about it was that I really had the opportunity, first time in my life, to completely handpick my office and the people that I was working with. We're not a very big office. There's sort of 10 full-time equivalents, but every single one of them is the absolute best at what they do. I've got the best communications guy, I've got the best chief of staff, I've got the best EA.
Right.
I've been really, really, really lucky in making that happen. And the one rule, to your point, is you always have to tell me the truth. So most days that involves, you're a mess. Clean yourself up.
Did you get that from your mother?
That I'm a mess? Don't
No,
say
no, no,
such
no,
things.
no, 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 no. That the truth, the honesty. Give it to me straight. Don't mess around. Don't sugarcoat it. Just give me the honest truth.
Well, certainly I grew up in a family that was like that. There was never. We had a difficult upbringing in some ways. Didn't have a lot of money. Trying to make their way in a new country, and there was no luxury for sugarcoating. There was no bubble wrapping of the kids that sometimes we see now. So I think that made a big difference. But it's also a bit me. People are always a little surprised, especially people who've been in politics for a long time or other politicians. And they'll always say things to me like, do you really want to tell the truth about that?
Wow.
Do you want to tell everything? And I always say, look, I'm not smart enough to be two-faced. I've only got the one face. Not a very good one, but I've got it. Yeah. And so I think that people deserve to have a lot of information, to know where I'm coming from, and I owe it to them to listen to them about what they think about things, and that only works if people are honest.
One thing about the mayor you will find as well, too, he does listen very much. He has a Twitter following of over 78,000 followers.
Is it that much now?
There are, well, it is.
Never even
I'm
looked.
keeping track. And the interesting thing about it, Mr. Mayor, you can put together a number of TV stations, and they don't have combined your kind of numbers. And I'm sure you would say it's fair to say that you are probably one of Calgary's most popular mayors.
Well, I don't know about popular, and that's for the voters to decide. But I think that one of the things that's important is getting out to people as best we can. A great example just this week, we had this terrible, awful water main break on Crowchild
Trail,
on Saturday night. And one of the things that I've really been pushing the city staff to do is, well, I guess to follow my lead a little bit on being very open with kinds of communications. Now, I run an organization that is full of engineers. I call them Bob the Builders because they always want to fix it.
Sure.
Can we fix it? Yes, we can. And so in previous emergencies, the answer they've always had is, well, we're going to try and get it open for the morning rush hour, for example. And what I said to them this weekend was, let's turn that on its head and let's actually hope for the best but prepare for the worst. So Sunday at noon, let's start telling people there's a good probability that road's not going to be open in the morning rush.
And the tweets came out, yeah.
Time to make different plans. And people loved it. And the city, and my colleagues at the city did an incredible job. There's
Certainly.
a web page that's constantly updated with videos showing the water main, showing how they're fixing it, talking about what a water main is, and giving people all the information they need. And I think people really appreciate that. And just interestingly, last night, I thought, geez, it's Sunday night. The people who are going to be the most impacted by this are students at Mount Royal University who have to write final exams, who might not be watching the evening news. And so let's just get it out there on Twitter and on Facebook and so on. And I put out one message on Facebook, and I can see the stats.
Yeah.
In under 20 minutes, it was viewed by over 8,000 people and shared almost 1,000 times. And I think that people really appreciated having that information so they could plan their commute this morning. And that's the kind of thing that I think really matters.
A lot of people would say that this mayor gets it. What do you say? 403-539-6710. 403-539-6710. And we're also getting a chance to talk to the folks in our studio audience. You can also send us a tweet, #Nenshi Live. This is Live with Mayor Nenshi, and we're going to ask him about whether or not there should be a South LRT. Don't answer that question.
There is a South LRT.
Well, an extension to the South. But we'll talk more about that after the break. This is Live with Nenshi, and this with Mayor Nenshi on Shaw TV.
This is not cool.
No?
No, this is not cool.
Oh my
God.
No penguin arms, Laura.
Don't
No
push me.
penguin arms.
Don't push me. This is called make it happen, not chicken out.
And I screamed. Hey, oh,
Everyone loves a marriage proposal, so let Shaw TV take you across the country where you'll spend quality time with some amazing people in beautiful places. Join hosts Aubrey and Sarah and check out some pretty elaborate proposal plans, all with the same goal. Will she say yes?
Hi, I'm John Allman from Kyle's Jewelry. Watch Kyle's Jewelry, The Proposal, only on Shaw TV.
It is live with Mayor Nenshi. My name is Phoenix. This is Shaw TV. We have questions from the audience, questions from you as well. 403-539-6710. You can also send us a tweet. Hashtag is Nenshi Live. As we mentioned, we have a studio audience here who has questions. And Gary, you're with which organization?
The Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society.
So do you know the mayor? Have you ever met the mayor, Gary?
No, we haven't met.
He's a fine, strapping young man, wouldn't you say?
Pretty much.
Yeah. You have a question for the mayor?
I do. As an organization, nonprofit organization who operates in the city, we've been here for 20 years, and we rescued injured and orphaned wildlife in Calgary in southern Alberta. We get probably 2,000 311 calls every year. So the calls go to 311, and then they forward them to us. And yet we have not been able to get any attention from the city of Calgary to help fund our operations. We basically scrape by every year. And what can we do to do that?
And by the way, wasn't that an area that used to be handled by the Calgary Zoo? And I believe that this is what sort of spun off from that, yes?
I think so. Gary would know better than we would what the history is there.
Yeah.
So, money is tight, and I've got to be blunt about that. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. But at the same time, we have to invest in stuff that makes the city a better place to live. And the city has for some time been relying on nonprofit organizations to pick up the slack. And in the area of what we call family and community support services, FCSS, that's social welfare groups, groups that work with people living in poverty or people who are falling between the cracks. We sort of have come to a world where, although that is a provincial government responsibility, we as a city think it's important enough that we should be funding it. And in fact, we're funding it at a greater level than our agreement with the province has us funding it. In the case of the work that you do, I think that it's probably fair to say that it's completely fallen between the cracks. Our folks, we have great folks in animal and bylaw services, but they deal with domestic animals. And it has been difficult to make the case, I think, for you guys that the city is responsible for wildlife, right? That's not a provincial responsibility. But I'm also not a fan of buck passing between the different levels of government. So this is a very long way of saying, write me a proposal and help me make the case that this kind of thing is something the city ought to be funding, how much money it's going to take, what benefits there are to the community, and we can have a very open discussion about it.
Mr. Mayor, we have some questions online or on the phone as well, too. 539-6710. This is Lisa, who's calling from the Northeast. Lisa, hi.
Oh, where's Lisa?
Lisa?
Hi.
There she is.
Hi,
Go
Lisa.
ahead, Lisa. You have a question for the mayor.
Yes, I'm wondering why it takes so long for the snowplows to start plowing the roads when there's a snowstorm.
Have you noticed that, Lisa, that they're not out there in your street or in your neighborhood?
Yes, and I live on Falcon Ridge Drive, so just
we're
across
neighbors.
the street from you.
Yeah, we're
and
neighbors.
when there's a snowstorm at 8 p.m. in the evening, at 8 a.m. in the morning, the snow is still on 68th Street.
So 68th Street, this is funny because this is actually the street that both Lisa and I use every single morning. 68th Street is what we call a priority 2 route, I think. I don't have the map right in front of me. And so, of course, our goal is always to do the priority 1 routes that carry more than 30,000 cars a day first. And sometimes if it's still snowing, you got to do multiple swipes at it. But what we did last year, 2010 actually, is we significantly increased the snow plowing budget in the city. Increased it by 1/3 as a matter of fact. And we now have performance standards that say the priority 1 routes must be done within 24 hours of the snow stopping. I really have to highlight the so stopping. People often are behind me saying, you know, it's still snowing and I haven't seen any plows. Well, unfortunately, modern science has not allowed us to plow it before it falls. But the priority 1 routes have to be done in 24. The priority 2 routes have to be done in 48. And I actually think that the snowplow crews have been doing a good job with their new expanded benefits, expanded resources. We've certainly seen a lot of positive feedback on that. And in fact, the number of collisions on snowy days has declined really significantly as a result. We can always do better. And I always encourage people that if you've got particular trouble spots, if you live on a hill, if you have an issue where there's an area that's not being done well, you have to call 311 and let us know.
$24 million was put into the budget, I believe, for the snow removal. Do you feel it's working? Do you feel it's money that we need more effort with? What seems to be the one issue that you feel that if we can just do this one thing, Phoenix, it would be this?
On snow plowing, you mean?
Yeah.
No, you know, I think we're actually doing a pretty good job on that.
Okay.
We're finding a lot of new efficiencies, and I got to tell you that on that particular one, I always have my little gauge, compliments versus complaints, and on that particular issue, the compliments into my office far outweigh the complaints. So this year, what we were able to do is we had a little bit of money left over, and so we expanded the number of priority 1 streets. We added, I want to say about 15 kilometers more of streets that were kind of on the verge, and also streets that have on-street bike lanes. There's, by the way, a really funny editorial about that. How can you only plow the bike lane? The cars will be... No, we're plowing the whole road that just happens to have a bike lane on it. And we were able to do that without increasing the budget at all. Now, this is a snowy winter. So this will also be a test for the other thing that we did, which is we created, I don't want to get into all the boring accounting of it, but we created a new form of budgeting for this particular business so that they're not always outspending their budget in snowy years and having savings in other years. We created a reserve fund for them. Last year they put money into the reserve fund because there was so little snow. This year they will likely have to take money out, so it'll be a good test to see if it works.
A couple of ways you can reach the mayor. You can call 403-539-6710. You can also send us a tweet, #Nenshi Live, like this tweet. This is from Tara. She's commenting about the drop-in center.
Yes.
The recent purchase by the Calgary Drop-In Center of the Quality Inn Hotel. How can the city, and she says, how could the city justify the proposed project in the Greenview community, which serves other care facilities?
So I know that project very well.
Yep.
And one of the things that I was unhappy about with that particular project was that happened without the city's input at all. I read about that in the newspaper. I didn't really like that so much. And as a matter of fact, one of the things the city is currently doing is ensuring that all of the right land use and zoning is in place for the drop-in center to do what they would like to do. And that process is taking a long time, which is not such a bad thing. I usually hate red tape. But the reason that process is taking so long is because it's a real opportunity to engage with the community in a big discussion about, well, what would you like there? Yeah, it was kind of a derelict, awful hotel in that spot at McKnight and Edmonton Trail. There's an opportunity for there to be something a lot better there that both meets the needs for housing. You know, we certainly have a gap in housing, especially in what you call single occupancy rooms, which is what the drop-in center wanted to do there. And we certainly have a gap there, but we can also use this as an opportunity to work within a community that's in transition. You know, Greenview is a community that skews a lot older than the rest of the city. There's a lot of seniors who are thinking about making their decisions. I'd like to give them opportunities if they have to leave their homes to stay in the same community. I'd like to be able to build up that community so that it become a major transit hub on a future North Central LRT line. And this is really our opportunity to do that. And I have to say that Councillor Gail McLeod, who is the councillor for that area, this has been her #1 priority for months now. And I think she's finally getting some traction on something that will be better for the community. And I'm very pleased about that.
And we're looking forward to hearing more from that as well, too. Habitat for Humanity is a nonprofit organization. I know, Leslie, you and I have, we've talked a few times also as well, too. We've done some stories with Go Calgary. And I know you have a question for the mayor.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about what kind of policy or initiatives you're looking at in order to enhance affordable housing within our city. There's several other cities across Canada. For example, Toronto recently passed a policy that allows increased density for developers if their proposal includes affordable housing. Other cities, it's a requirement in order to get a development permit. Just wondered what your thoughts were and what you were considering for
So we've got about an hour left, right? So we can talk just about that. This is incredibly important stuff. So you may be surprised to know, you probably wouldn't be surprised to know, but the viewers may be surprised to know that we have that same policy that allows for greater density if you include affordable housing. Want to know how many developers have taken us up on it this decade? None. Not one. So obviously that's a policy that isn't working. So I'm going to address that on 3 quick levels. The first is that our 10-year plan to end homelessness is working. It's working very, very well. We've housed about 4,000 people, difficult to house in the first 4 years of that plan. However, in order for it to continue to work, we need the funding from the other orders of government in order to build more affordable housing units. And the city doesn't have to build them all. In fact, I don't really like when the city builds them. Nonprofit organizations can do it better. Your organization is a great example of filling one market need for home ownership for people who are working but in poverty. There are lots of other people who aren't working, seniors, et cetera, et cetera. We have to fill all of those market niches. And I think the nonprofit sector can do it better than we can in most cases. But we need the money. So unfortunately, neither the provincial government, that had been a huge champion on affordable housing over the last 5 or 6 years, seems to be backing away a little bit from that. And in particular, I'm very worried about the federal government. A whole bunch of very important programs through CMHC and so on expire in 2014. And I have not heard anything from the federal government about what they're going to replace them with, or if they're going to renew them. And if that doesn't happen, we have a significant affordable housing crisis, and I'm very worried about that. Keeps me up at night. There's also a market-driven solution, and we have to do what every other city in Canada except one has already done, which is we have to legalize and regulate secondary suites. There's no question of that. It's a moral and legal imperative. We've got 30,000 people living in secondary suites that are illegal right now. And we have said to ourselves, you know, it's okay that there are our neighbors who live outside of the protection of the law. If their landlord is abusing them, if there's no heat, if there's mold, if there's mice, they have no one they can complain to. Because if they complain, we come and shut down their place because it's illegal. This is an untenable situation. And we need to be able to move these people into the protection of the law. We need to legalize these suites. We need to regulate them with some common sense things around parking and so on, and make that a market-driven, affordable housing solution. It's right for seniors who want someone to live in their house so they can stay in their house longer to help them with the lawn and the shoveling. It's right for people just starting out who need help with their mortgage. It's right for students. It's right in so many ways. The last survey that I saw of people in Calgary showed that 80% of Calgarians agreed with my plan on secondary suites. That has not yet included 8 members of my council. And I will continue to go to council and say, this is the right thing to do morally and ethically. It's also the right thing to do financially. And I hope that they will be able to listen to that.
More calls for you, Mr. Mayor. It is Jim from the Northwest. Hi, Jim. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. It's Jim Wilson here.
Hi, Jim.
How are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you.
Good, and I just wanted to first start off to thank you very much for the good job you're doing. I really think you really represent Calgary really well, and I'm really glad you're the mayor.
Thank you.
I had a question around the car to go.
Yes.
I looked at that as an option, and unfortunately they don't have it out in the suburb areas like the Hamptons and other places like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if the city has any plan to kind of do some partnership with them to try and expand that service out, because it seems like a really great way to get rid of some of the cars.
You know, that service has been unbelievably successful. I think it has surpassed the company's expectations as well as the city. So much so that nowadays people talk about, are there too many car-to-go cars? And it's interesting, before they launched, one of the things that I suggested to them was not to go up to where you live, but to extend out in East Calgary, where levels of car ownership are a little bit lower. And their business model really is about the core of the city. And they've expanded recently, and I think they're sort of Deerfoot to Crowchild, 16th to Glenmore now. And I would love to see different models like that. I will tell you, though, that that's not the only game in town. You know, if you're interested in exploring this, there is a Calgary car share cooperative which is a really neat thing, and an opportunity for you to see if there's some neighbors around you, or if you want to start advertising in your area, you could probably get one of those Calgary Car Share cars to be stationed somewhere around where you live. Hampton's Co-op, for example.
Yeah, that's an idea.
And I think that would be a really neat idea as well.
It's just the independence of having that one, being able to go, because sometimes with a job like mine, for example, where I don't really know my hours, and because sometimes kind of like what happened with the water main and everything like that, we have emergencies and I wind up downtown at 8, 9 o'clock at night or later. So it's the flexibility that car-to-go service provides, because it's kind of a one-to-one relationship that I think is something that maybe a transit type of situation could look at.
I absolutely hear you, and we have to look at a lot of these solutions for that last mile, right? Like, how do we get people from the LRT station to where they live? And think about all these different options. I mean, the really nice thing about car-to-go that a lot of people are finding is it may not remove the need to have a car in your family at all, but for a lot of people it removes the need to have a second car or a third car. And I think that looking at options like that make a lot of sense. If you live in the Hamptons, it's going to be very difficult in the long term to make it that you don't need a car, period. Just given the layout and the land use up there. But can we make it so that every member of your family doesn't need to be in a car for every single commute? And I think that's really the goal we need to move towards.
Jim, thank you very much for your call. Leanne from Tuscany, what are you thinking so far?
Speaking of Tuscany.
This is wild, eh? Just you sit around and chat with the mayor. What do you think?
I think it's fun. I think he's doing a great job. He's very well spoken.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't it amazing how a lot of people who talk about the mayor always seem to have something very positive to say? Why do you think that is?
Because he's a snappy dresser.
Wow.
I love you.
And he's very smart, and that's what I appreciate about my mayor.
And here comes the question.
Now she's warmed me up. She's softened me up.
I've softened you all
buttering
up.
up never helped.
Yeah,
Never hurt.
I also work for a nonprofit. I work for NeighborLink, who we work with
great
families.
organization.
Thank you.
Wow.
We work with families trying to prevent them falling into homelessness. And I have a question about the FCSS funding.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that new organizations did not qualify for that funding yet, and the same organizations were receiving it year after year. Is there going to be an opportunity for other nonprofits to receive that funding?
So the
FCSS is?
Family Community Support Services.
There we go.
So the short answer is I don't know. There's a very limited amount of funding in that pool, and I hate complaining about other governments, but the province has consistently been underfunding. It's supposed to be a 50-50 cost share, and the city now pays much more than 50%. But I launched last year a program in partnership with the United Way that I'm very excited about. It's called the Calgary Poverty Reduction Initiative, and I know that people from NeighborLink have been very involved in that. And the whole idea behind the Calgary Poverty Reduction Initiative is to answer a really awful question. And that awful question is, if I talk to you at NeighborLink, or I talk to Habitat for Humanity, or any other nonprofit organization, we get amazing stories about the impact you've had on people's lives. And you have. Yet, despite all these people doing all this amazing work, the rates of poverty haven't changed in a generation. And child poverty in particular is much too high and has not moved. So the whole goal of the Calgary Poverty Reduction Initiative is to take 10 steps back and say, what's wrong with our system? That we're having great impact with individuals, but we're not making a dent on the community problem of poverty. And I've tasked these people, and the only qualification was you have to be really smart to work on this stuff. I don't care if you work in the nonprofit sector, the private sector, or government. Think about this. And what I'm really hoping for is that, just like with the 10-year plan to end homelessness, 1 or 2 or 5 big ideas come out of this. And that those big ideas allow us to completely reshape how we think about poverty in this city, and how we enable the great work that you do and other organizations do at a more systemic level. And so that may mean, people always get nervous when I say this, but that may mean that FCSS looks really different in the future than it does now. It may mean that funding is allocated in very different ways than it is now. I don't know the answers yet, but I'm hoping these smart people will come up with something that will be better for us. And by the way, congratulations on the big crib issue.
Oh, yes.
If you all know about this, this is amazing. NeighborLink had a terrible shortage of cribs. and now have started a new partnership with Stortcraft, is it? That will allow them, because they were shocked, right? They said, you buy these at retail? What are you doing? Not only that cleared your backlog, but it will allow you a great source of cribs in the future. And that's innovation in the nonprofit sector. I was really happy to hear that.
403-539-6710, 403-539-6710. You can also send a tweet to our mayor, #Nenshi Live. We have another call. This is from Danny from Bridgeland. Danny, go ahead.
My favorite neighborhood. Hi, Danny.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yes,
Go ahead, Danny. Yep.
Yes, I would just like to say that I really think the mayor is doing a fantastic job, and I would certainly vote for him again. But as a senior, regarding the bus passes, I think he and the city council really dropped the ball on this one. For example, I earn only $100 over the basic amount, and yet I'm expected to pay this coming year $95. And I was wondering if perhaps it could be put on a graduated scale where I would pay, say, $40 instead of $95, seeing I'm only $100 over the basic amount.
So I'm really, really glad you raised that, Danny, and I think it's important for us to talk about this. So the first thing is, if you're just $100 over the basic amount, you may find that you are actually now eligible for the low-income pass. And let me explain. So for a long time, we had the largest subsidy on Calgary Transit was to low-income seniors who pay $15 a year for transit. And that remains the same. So if you're a low-income senior, you're still eligible for the $15 a year. And in fact, what council did is they raised the income threshold this year. So about 6,000 more seniors are now eligible for the low-income pass. And I hope that you fall into that group, Danny, and it's worth checking. That doesn't it doesn't come into effect until next summer. I mean, the new price doesn't come into effect till next summer. So hopefully you fall into that now. I'm just looking up, even though you're not up there, Danny, just because that's where your voice is coming from. So that's number one. The second biggest subsidy is for seniors who earn above the poverty line. They used to pay $55 per year, and council chose to increase that to $95 per year. So from $5 a month to $8 a month. And I'm not belittling that. For a lot of people, that is a lot of money. But the reason that we did that is because the low-income bus pass for non-seniors, which is 50% of the price of the regular bus pass, so that's about $44 a month as opposed to $95 a year, we needed to expand it. There were far too many people living in poverty, working poor people, who were not eligible for that bus pass. And for a lot of these folks, this is one of the most significant expenses of their lives. And I'm actually really proud of council. We brought 22,000 more working poor Calgarians into that umbrella. And this will make an enormous distinction in their lives. And the difference is that we've asked seniors living above the poverty line to pay a little bit more, still far less than the working mother with 2 disabled kids, if you like. Still far less than her, but we have asked seniors to pay a little more to defray that cost. And I know that's a hardship on a lot of people, but I think it was the right thing to do. However, a motion that I also sponsored at council is that over the next year, I would like a bigger discussion on that seniors bus pass, and I've asked them to look at a number of different options. One of them is exactly what you said, Danny. Can we turn it into a graduated pass? Leading up to different income levels, and how would we administer that? So that's one. I've also asked them to look at a bunch of out-of-the-box things. If you're a senior and you're medically unable to drive, should you get a free bus pass? If you are only using the transit system during off-peak periods, when the buses are running anyway and there's plenty of seats, should it just be free? How do we define income versus health? So all of these things will come out, and I've asked for a report to come back to us on that next summer, so that when we're making our decisions for 2014, we'll have all that in front of us. Sorry, that's a very long answer, but it is a bit of a complex issue.
403-539-6710. If you are just tuning in, it is Shaw TV, and we are talking live with Mayor Nenshi. If you have a call, then call us in. The mayor's already taken a few calls already. We have lots of room, another 30 minutes. And also, if you would like to, you can send in a tweet, #Nenshi Live. Sunday, hi.
Hi, Mayor Nenshi.
Hi, Sunday.
Hi, I'm just curious to know, I work with a lot of young people here in Calgary, and I'm just curious to know from you, how do you think the city can support young people, not only just give them a voice, but encourage them to be active citizens in our city?
Oh,
Well,
great
Mr.
question.
Mayor, before you answer that question, one of the things you might remember at the beginning, you also talked about how you actually were able to capture a lot of the younger audience as well, too, when you began your campaign, and look where you're standing now. So this is near and dear to your heart.
Oh,
yes.
absolutely. I probably spent a decade trying to help people between 20 and 35 get more engaged in the community before I started this job. And so I'll tell you about my little button. You gave me a beautiful segue to my button, and Phoenix is wearing one too. I always wear this number 3. And the number 3 stands for a very simple program that we launched this year called 3 Things for Calgary. And it is devastatingly simple. All it is I tell all Calgarians, and I'll tell all of you watching and all of you in the audience today, this is the year to do 3 things for your community. It doesn't matter if they are big things, taking on a new volunteer role, joining your local community association, or if they're small things, shoveling your neighbor's walk without being asked. My favorite example that I've told probably a million times now is the guy who said, I'm going to have a barbecue. And I said, okay. And he said, but I'm going to have it in my front yard instead of my backyard. And I'm going to invite my neighbors that I don't really know. These are the kinds of things that build communities. So when I say to young people, when young people say to me, how do I get more involved? I say, get more involved. And we have to recognize that none of us is too poor, none of us is too small, none of us is too weak, none of our voices are too quiet in order to make change in our community. We can't rely on big business or government or nonprofit organizations even to do that for us. We have to use our own hands and hearts and minds and souls to change the community. And so many people have responded. Tens of thousands of Calgarians have pledged to do their 3 things for the city, and so many of them are young people. And I think that's really how we get through that cynicism that young people have. Rather than wait for someone to do it for me, let's figure out a way I can make the community better. And certainly the city government can help you. Certainly there are resources that we can use to bring you together and to be able to do great things. But I love that, and I love that people are advocating. I love when I get letters from people complaining, from young people complaining about the lack of indoor skate parks. Or about how we need to support all ages shows in new ways. You'd think that that's irritating. Sometimes it's irritating. But the fact that people are advocating for stuff that they're passionate about, to me, that's what really matters. And when I was elected, when my whole council was elected, we had record high voter turnout. And I have to say that I was very disappointed in the most recent data point that we had, which is the Calgary Centre by-election, with how low the voter turnout was. And to me, it's not about getting people to vote so that they become engaged citizens. It's about helping people be engaged citizens so then they vote. And that's really the level at which I focus, helping people understand that the power to change their communities in their own hands.
403-539-6710, 403-539-6710. Tyson is calling from the northwest, I believe. Mr.
There's
Mayor?
nobody in the south calling. What's going on here?
What's with you people
Hi,
in the
Tyson.
south? Go ahead, Tyson.
I keep looking up. You're not
Yeah.
there.
Go ahead, Tyson.
Okay. Hello. I'm just wondering what it's going to take to get the number of the taxis in the city to match the level of economic and population growth we've seen in the last 20 years.
Great question. We have a significant problem I'll use the past tense, a significant problem with taxi regulation in this city in a number of different ways. And what we have done recently is a few things. Number one is we actually came up with a ratio based on the best practice in other cities of what the cab to population ratio should be. And we were low. And so we have instituted a number of new licenses that are on the road now, that have just gotten on the road, in order to address that. And these new licenses have a number of new restrictions on them that were never in the past. You have to drive Friday and Saturdays after midnight. The owner of the license has to be one of the primary drivers of the vehicle, and so on and so on. I think that's going to make a big difference. The other thing that is going to make a big difference is we've moved to, now it's going to get a bit geeky, but here we go, data-based regulation. Because in the past, for taxis, we had to rely on the taxi companies, on the brokerages, to tell us how things were going. But nowadays, every single cab has a GPS and a meter, a computerized meter in their taxi. And so we've asked for real-time information. So one thing I hear all the time, especially on weekends in December, is I'm calling and calling and calling and I can't get through. And I can't book a cab. And, you know, we were always told that's because there are no cabs because everyone is driving. But cabbies tell me all the time that on snowy days or on Christmas party days, they're sitting around waiting for dispatch to call them. And the problem is there's not enough people answering the phones. And so we had a situation of he said, she said for a long time. And I'm hoping that the data-based regulation will actually help us understand if that's true. And the other thing that we have committed to do is we will keep that cab to population ratio constant. In other words, as the population grows, we'll start to issue more licenses.
Wasn't part of the practice as well to give the exclusivity to associated cabs for the airport, which would free up, in essence, other cabs as well? Wasn't that part of the strategy as well?
You're assuming there was a strategy.
It was no strategy then, Mr. Mayor?
Well, that did happen.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, that happening did vastly increase the number of cabs that were available for flagging in downtown Calgary only, and mostly during the day. So we solved one problem, but the number one problem I hear about is not enough cabs at night. And our new licensing regime should start to address that, at least at the edges. And I have to say that having gone through Grey Cup weekend and having gone through the first two of the traditional Christmas party weekends, the third one is this weekend, it's still bad, but it is much, much better than it was last year.
There's a gentleman sitting right beside me here. He's dressed up in a Scout's uniform, and I'm curious, Jeff, you have obviously a question for the mayor. You're here for a reason, and just curious what your question is for the mayor.
Well, I had to think about this, Phoenix, when you asked me, because I asked if I should come as a business person, a citizen, or a scout. You said to come as a scout.
I'll take all three.
Mr. Mayor, we sort of met because you were kind enough to come to the 100th anniversary of the 31st Scout Hall, September the 15th. And, you know, I've heard words that you've used that have pleased me this evening in terms of youth and culture and infrastructure. And my question relates to that. Obviously, I'm here as a volunteer with a youth organization that has girls, boys, young adults, 5 to 26. We reside in a building that's owned by the city, a heritage building. It's 100 years old, obviously. And I'd like to take you back to December the 8th, 2010, in a Calgary Herald article entitled Heritage Buildings at Risk of Demolition by Neglect. And it talks about a report made by the Heritage Resource Authority, a City of Calgary agency, to the Strategic Land Asset Committee.
Terrible name for a committee,
in which
yes.
it said that there are 29 buildings, heritage buildings, owned by the city, 4 of which are in critical need of remediation, just to bring them up to some sort of a good standard, requiring $1 million. And to bring all 29 buildings back to a good standard 2 years ago would cost $9.6 million. Now, recently in budget deliberations, I noticed that I believe the number was $32.5 million from a take account appeared and was divvied up by various needs.
Oh, I
in
wish
the
I
city.
knew about that $32.5 million. There was no such thing, but go on.
All right.
Your question, Jeff.
My question is, in the last 2 years, what has been the city's strategy and how much money has gone into these properties, or what is the strategy going forward in terms of bringing these properties that are owned on behalf of the citizens, have been paid for by the citizens, to bring them up to a standard where they're not going to be demolished by neglect?
Mr. Mayor?
So it's actually something that I'll answer quickly. It's actually something that we have been working on as a new area of priority. And there's a number of different strategies. One is to better fund the heritage work that we do. And I don't remember the number, but it's not as big as you were suggesting because nothing is ever fully funded these days at the city. But there is more money going into that every year, into heritage buildings as well as existing buildings the city owns. There's also a strategy to divest some of these buildings as long as the private sector owner is willing to take on the heritage designation and do a better job than the city can do. And so there's a long strategy of those on a number of different places. And in fact, who knows, your Scouts Hall may become part of that conversation as well. Because often the city can't do it as well as someone who has a real vested love or interest in the building. And so we're working through all of these. I mean, a good example of this is Eamons, which we still don't have an answer for, but a heritage building that was in very serious danger of demolition, and the city voted the money to save it and move it and store it, and now I have no idea what we're going to do with it. If people have ideas, I'd love to hear them. But I think that was a real statement from City Council saying that we've got to figure out a better way to manage our heritage, and it can't just be the city buys them all and restores them all, and we've got to figure out a different way of doing it.
403-539-6710 to reach the mayor, 403-539-6710. You can also send a tweet, #Nenshi Live. We have Kirk, I believe, still on the line from the southeast. Kirk, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead. You have a question for Mr. Mayor, Mr.
Yes,
Naheed Nenshi.
Mr. Mayor. Hi there. How are you doing tonight?
There you are. I could barely hear you, Kirk, but go ahead.
Hi there. Yes, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for doing a show like this because it gives us a chance to kind of ask you some questions. So I think that's just a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
And one of the questions that I have is the airport tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And when it first came out, I remember the number being close to $500 million. It might have been 480 or something to that effect.
485 for the whole road. Mm-hmm.
Even at my age, I'm not doing bad.
Not bad at all.
Then it came in, so they had it figured out at 295, and I believe that was the number. And then it got voted in, and then it miraculously went back up to $500 million again. And if you could expand on that,
Sure.
I know there'll be reasons for it and so on.
Sure.
But what I'm leading towards is the tunnel going underneath the runway at $500 million. Maybe that money could have been slotted to help us in the southeast with the new LRT leg.
Sure.
And you looked really good driving one, so I thought you might want to drive another one. I don't know.
I would love to. I would
2
love
minutes
to.
for this.
And I can absolutely answer that. And so you're a little bit off, but I don't blame you because the numbers have been really confusing. So the numbers haven't changed at all. And in fact, the tunnel is almost done, knock on wood, and coming in both on time and on budget, which is great. So the tunnel portion itself is about $170 million, 171, if I recall the number correctly. And that is for the tunnel, which is kind of a very complicated interchange. You know, if you were going to build Glenmore, Elbow, 5th Street today, it would cost about that. And so that's the tunnel itself. The 485 is the full amount of money that won't be spent for probably 20 years in total for building out Airport Trail as an expressway all the way from Stony Trail to Center Street. So building a new expressway across the top of the city, of which the tunnel is a part. But that's a long-term number. The other thing about that one, which is weird, is that one of the reasons I supported it is that it was cheaper to build it than not to build it. Because if we didn't build it, then to create what I call the little hat, which is going up Barlow Trail, across Country Hills Boulevard, down Métis Trail, to build that hat out to full expressway standard would have been significantly more than the 485. And so that was one of the reasons we had to do it. The other challenge, of course, was the airport was building the runway. So if we didn't build it before the runway got built, we would never be able to build it, and we would be stuck with the cost for the hat. So I didn't like it much. I didn't like the fact that we had to do it so quickly, and I wish that council had planned for it in the past, but it had to be done. Getting on to the more important issue of Southeast Transit, sometimes people ask me, what would happen if you hadn't built that tunnel and you spent it on the Southeast instead? So forgetting about the hat, forgetting about all that money, that $171 million is about 5% of the cost of the Southeast LRT. Wow. So I'd still have a pretty big gap left to go. And so the challenge with the Southeast LRT is very, very blunt. It's really far and it's really expensive. The West LRT that we just opened is 9 kilometers. To take the Southeast LRT from downtown to Seaton is 26 kilometers, 27 kilometers. It's 3 times as far. And the West LRT was the single most expensive public works project in Calgary history, $1.4 billion. The Southeast LRT will be a minimum of $3 billion.
Wow.
So you see my problem.
So it's not a closed idea. It's just that we've got a lot
no,
of
we're
things
going
to
to build
deal
it.
with.
We're going to build it. I just got to find $3 billion. Easy.
We have to. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. We have to take a quick break here. We will come back with you.
And I'd like to finish answering that question when we come back. Oh, should I do it now?
Oh yeah, go.
Okay. So very briefly, from Seaton to downtown right now on the BRT on a good day is 60 minutes. Way too long. Buses are stuck in traffic. We are building a system of dedicated busways for the short term, which will take that 60 minutes down to about 45, which will make a huge difference. Interestingly, the LRT only takes that 45 down to 35 or 40 for a significant $1 billion additional money. We will have to do it. Eventually, the buses will not be able to hold the traffic we need, but in the meantime, that BRT has to be It actually has to work. And so our major priority for whatever transit money we have right now, after buying 4-car trains, is to vastly improve transit in Southeast Calgary.
One dying question that a lot of us have here in Calgary. What is that one dying question? We're going to find out right after the break. It is live with Mayor Nenshi here on Shaw TV. Hang on.
This is not cool.
No?
No, this is not cool.
Oh my God.
No penguin arms, Laura.
Don't
no
push
penguin
me.
arms.
Don't push me. This is called make it happen, not chicken out.
And I screamed.
Everyone loves a marriage proposal, so let Shaw TV take you across the country where you'll spend quality time with some amazing people in beautiful places. Join hosts Aubrey and Sarah and check out some pretty elaborate proposal plans, all with the same goal. Will she say yes?
Hi, I'm John Allman from Kyle's Jewelry. Watch Kyle's Jewelry, The Proposal, only on Shaw TV.
Welcome back to Shaw TV. It is live with Mayor Nenshi. It is the lightning round, if you will, Mayor.
I'm trying to answer questions fast. I'm no darn good at that, but I will
just have
try.
to ask the questions fast. Cassidy, you have a question for the mayor.
I certainly do. Mayor Nenshi, you briefly mentioned that the southeast leg is so damn expensive. My question to you is, what do you think will be the next leg, the southeast, farther north, and when could that be implemented?
Maybe Chestermere?
No. But so to answer your question, one of the things that we've done, and in fact it was just released on Friday, is create something called Route Ahead, which is a 30-year plan for Calgary Transit. Much to my surprise, when I was elected, I realized there'd been no plan before. And so the Route Ahead draft document, which is available now at routeahead.ca, shows kind of what the phasing and the priorities will be for the next major investments in transit. It's still a draft. In fact, it goes to committee on Wednesday to really talk through. The most interesting part of it is that we're really thinking about the North Central and Southeast LRT as one giant leg of the LRT, 40 kilometers long, all the way from Keystone, north of Stony Trail at Harvest Hills Boulevard, right down to the new hospital at Seaton. And so my sense is that what will end up happening is they'll start in the middle and radiate out. So you may have, for example, a phase that goes from 16th Avenue North to Quarry Park, and then extend it out on either end. But in the meantime, as I said, the major investment we're making in transit after the 4-car trains is to build those dedicated busways along the southeast LRT right-of-way and get those buses moving much faster.
Jennifer from Mackenzie Town. Hi, Jennifer. How's that circle thing? How's that
Some
thing
days
going?
are better than others.
I
It really
bet.
depends on what the traffic's like.
Your
But
question for the mayor.
You know, Jennifer, I'll just say I drove through it about a week ago for the first time since the lines were painted.
Successfully.
Yes.
Oh, totally successfully. And frankly, I looked at it and went, I'm not confused by this. What am I missing here? But anyway,
okay,
go on.
so my question is, according to the driver's handbook, When you
Oh,
enter a
yes.
traffic circle on the right lane.
Okay, learner's permit. I can remember.
Right?
Go.
You get one turn. You get, like, if you're in the right lane, you can go one exit.
Yeah.
Now, when I drive through and I look at those lines, I am so confused. Lanes. When you get to the third turn, there's all of a sudden these lines that show that you shouldn't be driving in the left lane anymore. And I'm just, do we go with what the book says to do, or do we try and follow the lines? Because the two don't.
So the
connect.
answer is follow the lines for now. However, the rest of the answer is it's not working and we're getting rid of the lines.
Okay, perfect.
And, and just very quickly on that point, one of the things that I am very keen on is an entrepreneurial, innovative attitude in government, and that means we try stuff. And it also means sometimes we screw it up, and sometimes we fail. And in this particular case, looked good on paper. I wasn't confused by it, but I guess a lot of people are.
But were you not
and I did it on a
confused by the
Saturday
lines,
afternoon
or
when there
were
was.
you not confused because you know how to drive a traffic circle?
I followed the lines.
Okay.
But I also did it on a Saturday afternoon when there wasn't much traffic, right?
Right.
So it was really easy because there was nobody in the lane next to me. And so Alderman Keating, I know, has been working hard on this one. And the answer is we have to find something that's better and less confusing. The problem is a two-lane traffic circle is a bit confusing to begin with. But we'll fix it, and we'll just make it work better.
Less than 3
And
minutes.
in the meantime, go with the traffic. Go with
In the
what
meantime,
the
go
book
with the
says.
lines.
traffic.
Yeah.
Jennifer, thank you.
Because no
very-
one else has read the driver's handbook.
There you go. Less than 3 minutes remaining. Mr. Mayor, that one question I suggested that Calgarians are asking is, are we getting a new arena or not? The Flames got to play somewhere.
Shouldn't you ask the Flames that question?
Well, I guess, but it's going to involve us. It's going to involve you, the city.
I've often said that I am not a fan of public funding for that kind of activity. I've also said, however, that I'm open to a conversation. I have not, and I also promised the Flames that if they came to me with a proposal, I would read it with an open mind. Over the last 2 years, no proposal has come. So
never say never.
Well, I really would need to be convinced.
I understand that. I don't mean to put
And
you on
then
the
you
spot.
can't convince me by saying Lady Gaga doesn't come to Calgary. I don't think that public funds necessarily need to go to bring Lady Gaga to Calgary.
A lot of concert fans are waiting for that new arena so we can bring Lady Gaga down, but I hear what you're saying. Lauren, come on. You've been watching this for the last 45 minutes.
Well, I think it's been great, and I think congratulate everyone involved for creating a forum like this for Calgarians to ask the mayor a straight question, and so good on you. Mr. Mayor, I think you've done a wonderful job. I think you've listened to Calgarians. You're wearing the number 3 proudly. I saw you wear that same button a couple of months ago at a unique facility for Calgary, the Genesis Center, where you were keynote speaker, but awarding a lot of bright young children accolades and awards.
They were impressive kids, too.
They were
weren't
very
Wow.
smart kids. And so are you worried about that next generation in the next election? Inspiring someone to run against you?
Bring it on.
That's half the question. No, talk to us a little bit about, or maybe educate Calgarians a little bit more about Genesis.
1 minute.
Very quickly, Genesis Center was the first of 5 new recreation centers to be built in the city of Calgary. The previous council only got to fund the one of them. And it's a beautiful facility. It's got a YMCA, it's got indoor soccer, but it's also got a community center that is really the heart of that community in Northeast Calgary. And one of my top priorities when I took office was get the other 4 built. And I'm thrilled that we were able to find a financing strategy for them. 3 new recreation centers for Southeast Calgary, 1 for Northwest Calgary. Many of them will have library branches in them, and really, as the Genesis Center does, and really serve as the hearts of their community. I am thrilled that's happening. I just want to get the shovels in the ground, and I'm hopeful that that'll happen over the course of 2013.
Thank you, Lauren. I believe we have about just under a minute, guys. Just under a minute to go. Mr. Mayor, I hope it was okay for you. Some great questions came from our community, and I hope it was okay for you having a live studio audience.
Well, this is great, and I want to remind people, if you didn't get your questions answered today, you can always find me. If you want a short, pithy answer on Twitter, at Nenshi. If you want to engage in a discussion with the community about your question, come join our Facebook page, facebook.com/Naheed Nenshi. And you can always contact my office, themayor@calgary.ca, or just call 311.
He has 78,000 followers right now. He's got room for, 1.1 followers here in Calgary and then counting.
And it's just me answering those questions on Twitter. It's really me.
Is it really just you?
It really is
Seriously?
just me. No one, me and Justin Bieber. No one else has the password. We're very similar, Justin
You may
and
see
I.
he actually has a phone right beside him here. Now, you haven't reacted to it in the last...
Aldrin McLeod says my answer on the drop-in center was correct, so that's good.
There you go. How much time do we have, guys? Give it to me real quick. About a minute and a half, okay? Minute and a half here. So is there anything in particular going forward that you're really going to concern yourself with?
So over the course of the next year, there are really, in addition to doing all the stuff we need to do and getting those rec centers built, there are 3 big things one should keep an eye out for as a citizen. The first is what I talked about before, Route Ahead, the new plan for Calgary Transit. This is vitally important and we really welcome your input. The second and third are things we talked about at Council today. The second is a new program called Next City Transforming Planning. And it's about how we think about planning in a new way, how we cut red tape, how we build better stuff in the city. And we're really going to be engaging with Calgarians on that. The third is unbelievably dry, but the most important thing we can do for generations. And that is to create a new relationship with the provincial government, to continue our discussions on a city charter with the province, to understand that the 1.1 million people who live in Calgary need the ability to make decisions that affect their own future. It has to do with how we finance things like the $13 billion we'll need over 30 years to build out the transit system that Route Ahead calls for, down to how we make decisions, down to how we devolve powers so that things like FCSS can be properly dealt with at the level of government that's closest to the people, which is the municipal level. So call your MLA, talk to them about the importance of city charters, and let's look forward to that discussion.
And let's look forward to your campaign, which is for running the mayor next time around. So good luck to you, sir.
Thanks very much. I won't be thinking about campaigning for a long time yet, at least not until the spring. I got a job to do.
Take care.
Thank you.
Live with Mayor Nenshi. Thank you.